Welcome. This is JB. We are going to discuss physical features in Eastern Africa. The main physical features in Eastern Africa, among them the mountains, the valleys, the plains, lakes, rivers, swamps, and oceans. But before that, we need to understand that Eastern Africa is made up of 11 countries. And these countries include Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia, Sudan, Somalia, Burundi, Djibouti, Rwanda, Eritrea, Tanzania, South Sudan. These 11 countries make up the Eastern Africa. We need to understand what physical features are. As we go by, we should get to know that Eastern Africa, among these countries, these physical features that we are going to look at are spread in some areas within these 11 countries. Physical features we need to know that are the natural things that are found on the surface of the earth. That they are natural things that are found on the surface of the earth. For example, these mountains that I've mentioned, the valleys, the plains, the lakes, the rivers, the swamps, and oceans, among others. These make up what we call the physical features. We need to understand the examples of mountains that we have in Eastern Africa. We have some major mountains, for example, Mount Kilimanjaro. We have Mount Elgon. We have Mount Rwenzori. We have Mount Kenya. We have the Nakil Alps. We have Usambara. We have Mount Hehe. We have Karisimbi. We have Mount Mara. All these are examples of major mountains in Eastern Africa. We also have another feature that we ought to know some examples, and this is the valleys. A valley, what is a valley? We need to understand that a valley is a low-lying area with steep slopes. A low-lying area with steep slopes. In Eastern Africa, the Rift Valley has got two branches, and these two branches include the Eastern Rift Valley and the Western Rift Valley. These two make up the two branches of Rift Valley in Eastern Africa. We also have another example that we call the plains. So the plains, we need to understand what plains are. Plains are also low-lying areas that have a flat surface. So the difference we have to notice between valleys and plains is that valleys have got steep slopes and plains have got a flat surface. Examples of plains in Eastern Africa include Lotikipi Plains in Kenya. We have Serengeti Plains in Tanzania, and we have Bilesha Plains in Somalia. Those are but examples of plains in Eastern Africa. We also have lakes. Lakes in Eastern Africa. Before that, we ought also to understand what lakes are. What are lakes? A lake is a large water body of fresh or salty water occupying a depression. Examples of lakes in Eastern Africa, they include Lake Turkana in Kenya. We have Lake Victoria, That is, it covers three countries, that is Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. We also have Lake Tana in Ethiopia. I understand this Tana is common. The name Tana is common because of Tana River in Kenya, but in Ethiopia we have a lake called Lake Tana. We also have Lake Albert and Lake Kyoga, both in Uganda. We need to understand that despite having these physical features, there are various ways in which they are performed or they are formed. The ways in which they are formed is as follows. We need to start by looking at how mountains or various mountains are formed. And the formation of mountains, there are various types of mountains in Eastern Africa. We also need to understand these types of mountains. One category of mountains is volcanic mountains. There's another category that we call block mountains. We also have fold mountains. When we look at the formation of volcanic mountains, before that, we need to also understand what volcanic mountains are. Volcanic mountains are formed through volcanic eruption. Here, magma is pushed up the vent and accumulates around, forming volcanic mountains. We also need to understand that we have examples of volcanic mountains in Eastern Africa, and they are as follows. When we have Mount Kenya, it's a volcanic mountain. We have Mount Elgon. We have Mount Longonot in Kenya. We also have Mount Karisimbi in Rwanda. We also have Mount Meru and Kilimanjaro, both from Tanzania. Apart from having volcanic mountains and also understanding the process through which they are formed, we also have the second type of mountains that we call block mountains. They are also called host mountains. The block mountains can be called host rocks or host mountains. They are formed through a process called faulting. We also need to understand that when compressional forces push rocks towards one another, faults form. The land between the fault rises up to form what we call block mountains. So in this particular process, it is good to notice that there is faulting, the process we call faulting. And when the compressional forces push rocks towards one another, then faults form. It means that the land between the faults is the one that rises up to form the block mountains. Examples of block mountains in Eastern Africa, they include the Nakil Alps, which is found in the border of Ethiopia. We also have Ruwenzori Mountains in Uganda. We have Pare and Usambara in Tanzania. There is also what we call formation of lakes. How are lakes formed? The major lakes in Eastern Africa, we ought to understand that they were formed through river deposition. They were also formed through faulting, downwarping, and deposition. Those are some ways in which lakes in Eastern Africa were formed. We have the first category of lakes and how they are formed, and those are Rift Valley lakes. How are Rift Valley lakes formed? When you look at this, during the formation of a Rift Valley, some parts of the land sink deeper than others, forming a depression. So the depressions that are formed are filled with water to form lakes. For example, we have Lake Tanganyika, which is formed through this process. Some Rift Valley lakes are salty while others are fresh. We need to understand that a lake is considered fresh due to having what we call inlet and outlet. And a lake is also considered salty due to lack of an outlet. When it doesn't have an outlet, it means it is a salty water lake. As we go by, we have lakes formed as a result of down warping. Down warping is also another process of lake formation. Down warping is a process by which the Earth's surface sinks inwards due to pressure, forming a big basin. Examples of down warping lakes is Lake Victoria. It is formed through this process of down warping. Lakes formed as a result of volcanicity is another formation of lakes. That under this we have examples of lakes. There is lava-damped lakes. How are lava-damped lakes formed? They are formed when lava flows on the surface of the earth and come into contact with a river, blocking it. When lava comes into contact with a river and blocks it, this blockage leads to the formation of what we call a lake, and that is lava-damped lake. Examples of lava-damped lakes, we have one example, that is Lake Kivu. That is an example or a good example of lava-damped lakes. We also have what we call crater lakes. How are crater lakes formed? We need to understand the process. Crater lakes, this is how they are formed. When volcanic eruption occurs, the top of the mountain may be blown off, forming a hollow depression. And this hollow depression that is formed is called crater. Examples of crater lakes, we have Paradise in Kenya, we have Shala in Ethiopia. Those are two examples of crater lakes formed in this process. We also have another physical feature that we call plains, and we need to understand that plains are wide, low-lying areas of flat land, as we have just quoted earlier, and plains are formed as a result of erosions and deposition of the eroded materials. Whenever there is what we call erosions and deposition of the eroded materials, then plains are formed. And we also talked of the difference between the plains and the rift valleys or the valleys. That valleys have got deep or steep slopes, while plains have got flat surface on the low-lying areas. Thank you for your time. Remember to subscribe, like, and comment.